Good morning, church. How you guys doing? You feeling good this morning? I'm excited to bring the word today. Pastors Kevin and Beth are actually out of town traveling, having a little family vacation, which is good and needed. And many of you may not know this, but Kevin and Beth are actually my aunt and uncle. And growing up, my parents were actually our pastors, and they were the worship leaders. And now I'm just incredibly grateful to be able to follow in their footsteps as the worship pastor here at Airborne. And it's just been such a blessing to be able to do ministry with family, and I'm so thankful to you guys today for entrusting me to speak this morning. So we miss you guys. We hope you're having fun, and I know they're watching, so let's give it up for our pastors this morning. How many of you guys have just been loving this family series that we've been in so far? We've seen so many good families come across the stage, hear their stories. I hope that you guys have been implementing these. All right. What's going on here? I think maybe we need to stop here. Maybe we need to check out the cameras, guys. They're a little bit blurry. I don't know if you guys can. How many of you guys love our tech team? I love our tech team. They're so good. But right now they're making us look really, really bad. I don't know if you guys maybe could adjust the focus there a little bit. There we go. A little bit of focus never hurts, right? As you might know or have guessed already this morning, I want to talk about F is for focus. And how many of you know that it is so hard to stay focused on something these days? We live in a world where there are so many things that try to steal our attention. There's a constant stream of notifications, text, emails, endless scrolling through social media and video platforms, all kinds of entertainment. We have this endless demand for attention that's trying to steal our focus every second. And it can be challenged to stay focused on a single task or a goal. You know, I'll tell you, even this week as I was writing this message, I found it hard to stay focused on what I was doing. You know, you guys know how it is. You know, you sit down, you try to accomplish something. For me, I was sitting down trying to write this message and then get a text message. You look at it and you answer it, and then the next thing you know, Carrie's posting photos on social media. It's like, all right, well, Instagram, and you're scrolling on Instagram. The next thing you know, you're 30 minutes down the rabbit hole, right, on Instagram in this technological daze, and finally you snap out of it and realize you've been on social media for like 2 hours, right? How many of you guys have ever experienced that? I think it's something that we all struggle with these days. Proverbs, I want to read a scripture in Proverbs 4:25. It says, "Look straight ahead and fix your eyes on what lies before you. Mark out a straight path for your feet. Stay on the safe path. Don't get sidetracked. Keep your feet from following evil." You know, that is some great wisdom for us this morning, to fix our eyes, to stay focused on what lies ahead of us, not worrying about what's behind us, but keep moving forward and keeping our focus ahead. You know, remaining focused is something that we have to get good at. We have to practice it. Focus is actually the only thing that we have complete control over. We get to decide at any given moment where we will fix our eyes, where we put our focus and our attention. There are so many other factors in our lives that are beyond our control, but the one thing that we do have control over right now is our focus. And so we're in the middle of this family series, so I thought my first point today would be focus on the family. There's nothing better that we can do than put our focus on our families. You know, a few weeks ago, we talked about the importance of having a vision for our families. Proverbs 29:18 says, "Where there is no vision, the people perish." Just like those cameras were blurry earlier, when you don't have a focus for your family, your vision isn't very clear. Focus actually brings clarity to your vision. I love my family and I love being able to spend time with them. I think they got a picture of my family. Maybe, possibly. There they are. But it's my wife, Carrie, and we have 3 girls. Lydia, 7, Avery's 5, and Caitlin, who is 18. Quite an age gap there, but let me tell you, we love having an 18-year-old in our house. We got a sit-in babysitter. But no, she really loves the girls. She loves kids. She takes care of them. But this last week, we actually had the opportunity to get away a little bit. My brother called me up and said, hey, you want to go to King's Dominion? And we took him up on that offer. So we went to King's Dominion. The weather was perfect. It wasn't very hot. There was no lines at all, no people there. We were able to just jump on, get on rides, right? It was a perfect day at King's Dominion. And so those of us who decided that we wanted to go ride the big rides, we would go off and kind of do our thing, and then the ladies would go with the kids, and they would do all the smaller kiddie rides with the kids and everything. Well, we decided that we were going to go to our first ride, which was the Intimidator 305. Listen, this is one of the biggest coasters at the park. We were so excited. It stands 305 feet tall in the air, has an 85-degree decline, and it reaches speeds of over 90 miles per hour. So we sit down in the car, we get all strapped in, we got our shoulder straps on and the belt, whatever else was there. And we start taking off, and of course, you're going up the hill and that anticipation is hitting, right? So you've got like all the roller coaster banter, you know what I'm talking about? Like, oh man, this is so high, this is gonna be so awesome. I hope our straps don't come undone. What do we do? That's what I'm thinking in my head. Oh my gosh, how am I gonna hold on to this if something breaks? But so we get up there, we get to the top of the hill, and we turn the curve, we go down, and over 90 miles per hour. Now listen, I'm excited. I get hype on roller coasters. I'm like screaming and like waving my hands and everything. But I noticed that I didn't hear anything to my right. It's like, what is going on? I look over and my nephew is completely blacked out. Like this thing was going so fast that he blacked out. And I'm saying the whole thing, like he's got his mouth wide open, his tongue's hanging out, his lips are flapping in the wind. Like it was the whole, what you would expect, It was awesome. So we come up over the turn, he wakes up, he snaps. I think we got a couple pictures. I wish I had that picture, but I don't. But as you can tell, we're also cheap. I just took a picture of the screen. They didn't love that too much, but I said, what are you gonna do, come and fight me? So, good, show them the next one. There you go. That's me, I love a good roller coaster. But has anyone ever experienced a blackout on a roller coaster before? I'm curious, is anyone else in here? Wow, it's a lot of people. Okay. But you're going so fast that your vision actually starts to get a little blurry and your peripherals start to go black. This is such a great example of what happens when we lose focus of our families and begin focusing on everything else, moving so fast in life. We begin to experience tunnel vision. We get caught up in life, work, social commitments, school, events, personal ambitions. We're just constantly on the go that our attention becomes fragmented and our minds become preoccupied with everything else that we eventually black out and lose our vision and our focus on our families. It's so important to stay focused on our family. The family unit is one of God's greatest creations. The family is a God-ordained and God-designed institution that's meant to fulfill the greatest purpose on earth. God created the family to be a representation of himself to the world. In other words, God has a plan for your family. God has a plan for my family, and it's to reflect his image on the earth. In Genesis, the Bible says that God created us to reflect his own image, his own glory on the earth. So families as a unit is a representation of God himself on the earth. The Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit to be reflected in the family. And this is why we got to keep our focus on the family. It's so important. Is it any wonder that the enemy of our souls would do everything within his power to come against the single most powerful representation of God on the earth? The enemy is sneaky and relentless, constantly trying to distort and twist God's original design for family. There's nothing that the enemy would love to do more than to give people a warped view of what God actually meant to be his greatest representation on the earth. And can I tell you, parents, we have a responsibility. It's actually a calling to be vigilant and aware of what our kids are exposing themselves to. Our kids have so much at their fingertips: social media, countless online platforms, music choices, movies just a click away. We need to be intentional about setting clear boundaries and helping our kids navigate in the digital world. This is how we safeguard their hearts and their minds to help keep them aligned with the focus of God's truth and his wisdom. You know, it's not about being overbearing or sheltering them from everything, but about guiding and protecting them and leading them along the way. I got one little resource that I want to share with you guys. It's something that Carrie and I has found really useful in our lives with protecting our kids, and it's pluggedin.com. I think they might have a little video of it, but it's got like a little rating system there. Based on their age group, and it goes through all the movies, music, TV channels, anything that they might be viewing online, and gives a Christian perspective. You know, this is just such a great resource. It's by Focus on the Family. And a resource like this really allows parents the opportunity to make their own decisions about the content that their kids are viewing based on the values that they have set in their home. And I highly, highly recommend parents of young children to check out pluggedin.com. We have to stay focused on our families so that we have a clear vision and path for their success. I'm going to read Proverbs 4 again. It says, "Look straight ahead and fix your eyes on what lies before you. Mark out a straight path for your feet. Stay on the safe path. Don't get sidetracked. Keep your feet from following evil." So this leads to my next point. Fix your focus. It's so easy sometimes to lose that path or to stray away from your vision. If that happens, we need to fix our focus. You know, I love the story of the 12 spies that were sent into the land of Canaan, into the promised land. After the people of Israel were delivered from the Egyptians, I mean, you guys all know the story. Let my people go. And then finally, Pharaoh let the people go, and God parted the Red Sea, and they crossed safely. Well, after that, God had promised to take them into a land flowing with milk and honey, a land of abundance and blessings. And Moses handpicked 12 spies, one from each tribe, to explore the promised land and come back with a report of what they would find. Unfortunately, when the spies returned, they didn't have a very good report. So we're going to pick up this story in Numbers 13:21, and I'm reading in the Message because it makes it really fun. When they arrived at the Eshcol Valley, they cut off a branch with a single cluster of grapes. It took 2 men to carry it, slung on a pole. They also picked some pomegranates and figs. They named the place Eshcol Valley, Grape Cluster Valley, because of the huge cluster of grapes they had cut down there. After 40 days of scouting out the land, they returned home. They presented themselves before Moses and Aaron and the whole congregation of the people of Israel in the wilderness of Paran and Kadesh. They reported to the whole congregation and showed them the fruit of the land. Then they told the story of the trip. "We went to the land to which you sent us, and oh, It does flow with milk and honey. Just look at this fruit. The only thing is that the people who live there are fierce. Their cities are huge and well fortified. Worse yet, we saw descendants of the giant Anak. Amalekites are spread out in Negev. Hittites, Jebusites, and Amorites hold the hill country, and the Canaanites are established on the Mediterranean Sea and along the Jordan. You see, these 10 were all focused on what could have happened if they took over the land that God promised. They saw the giants, they saw the fortified cities. They allowed their fear to take hold, and their hearts and their focus were completely misplaced. But there was 2 spies, Joshua and Caleb, who understood the power of fixing their focus. They had a completely different report. They saw the same giants, they saw the fortified cities, but they chose to fix their focus on God's promise. So we'll pick it up again in verse 30. It says, Caleb interrupted, called for silence before Moses and said, "Let's go up and take the land now. We can do it." I don't know about you, but that reminds me of our pastor. But the others said, "We can't attack those people. They're way stronger than we are." They spread scary rumors among the people of Israel. They said, "We scouted out the land from one end to the other. It's a land that swallows people whole. Everybody we saw was huge. Why, we even saw giants. Alongside them, we felt like grasshoppers." The whole community was in an uproar, wailing all night long. All the people of Israel grumbled against Moses and Aaron. The entire community was in on it. Why didn't we die in Egypt or in the wilderness? Why has God brought us to this country just to kill us? Our wives and children are about to become plunder. Why don't we just head back to Egypt and right now? That stinking crowd. Isn't that right, Shabby? Where's Shabby at? That stinking crowd. It only takes one negative person in the crowd to spoil the whole group. Their perspective just changed the entire Israelites' perspective. After years of captivity in Egypt, they were willing to turn around on God's promise and go right back to captivity and bondage. Now let's be real. There are real consequences when we misplace our focus. The Israelites allowed fear and doubt to control them, and this is what resulted in. Pick it up again in 26. It says, God spoke to Moses and Aaron. How long is this going to go on? All this grumbling against me by this evil-infested community. I've had my fill of complaints from these grumbling Israelites. Tell them, as I live, God's decree, here's what I'm going to do. Your corpses are going to litter the wilderness. Every one of you 20 years and older who was counted in the census, this whole generation of grumblers and grousers, not one of you will enter the land and make your home there, the firmly and solemnly promised land, except for Caleb and Joshua. Yikes. Your children, the very ones that you said would be taken for blunder, I'll bring in to enjoy the land you rejected while your corpses will be rotting in the wilderness. These children of yours will live as shepherds in the wilderness for 40 years, living with the fallout of your unfaithfulness until the last of your generation lies a corpse in the wilderness. Wow. Because of one generation's unbelief, the next generation had to miss the promises of God for 40 years. They spent 40 years wandering in the wilderness until every single person from that generation had died. They missed out on God's best for them because they couldn't fix their eyes on what truly mattered, the fruit of the promised land. How many of you know that sometimes we need to take our focus off of the giant and focus on the fruit? Focus on the blessing of God. Focus on the promises of God and the things that God promised you. We have an entire Bible that's full of the promises of God that we can focus on. Do we believe them? Do we focus on them instead of the giants that we may be up against? Do we focus on God's strength instead of our weakness? Do we focus on God's victory instead of our defeat? Do we focus on God's hope instead of depression? Do we focus on God's love instead of living in fear? Do we focus on his peace instead of living in anxiety? Do we focus on his forgiveness instead of living in shame and condemnation? Do we focus on his freedom instead of being chained up in bondage and addiction? Do we focus on joy instead of our despair? Do we focus on his provision instead of our lack? His righteousness instead of our sin? And do we focus on God's healing power instead of our sickness and ailments? Your focus will determine your future and the future of the next generation. Let that sink in this morning. Your focus will determine your future and the future of the next generation. Are you focusing on the giants or are you focusing on the fruit? Just like the Israelites in this story, those who focused on their circumstances died in the wilderness and actually held back an entire generation from receiving the blessing of God while they were still alive. We need to fix our focus because there are generations coming after us that depend on it. Number 3, focus on the next generation. You know, there's nothing better that our church can be doing than focusing on the next generation. And that's what we're all about here at Airborne. We are building for future generations. Psalm 78:4, it says, we're not keeping this to ourselves. We're passing it along to the next generation, God's fame and fortune, the marvelous things he has done. So everyone say with me, pass it down. What is it? What can you pass down to the next generation? Stories and testimonies of God's faithfulness and his goodness. Wisdom that he's given you. Passion for serving in God's house. A whatever it takes spirit. Talents and the gifts that God has given you to serve his church. And the list goes on and on. We need to be passing it down to the next generation. You know, a few weeks ago we had Airborne Kids Takeover here on Sunday, and it was incredible. How many of you guys remember a couple weeks ago we had the chapel band up here, and they killed it. It was awesome. They led worship so well. We started on Tuesday. We practiced on Tuesday. We practiced on Wednesday. Then they led worship on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday for all the kids, and then Sunday morning, they were here bright and early again to lead worship for the whole church. And I think it's absolutely incredible to see the next generation's passion and hunger for what God is doing in his church. And that's because we, as the body, as the church, have been passing it down to the next generation. I absolutely love it. You know, Eldon killed it on the drums. The vocals sounded so good, and they led worship so confidently and powerfully. Many of you wouldn't know this, but during that worship service, I was actually serving as an MD, we like to call it, the music director. So I was actually standing backstage behind that curtain the whole time with a microphone so that I could talk to them in their in-ears. They all wear in-ear pieces. So that I was able to talk to them, give them cues, help them along in the worship set. I was also starting and stopping their music and the tracks for them. I love that position. Just being able to step out of the way and allowing the next generation to come up behind and be everything that God has called them to be. It's an awesome spot to be. It's allowing God to use me in a different way, a supportive way. Being in a position that I was able to pass along the wisdom and the giftings that God has given me to the next generation. So we need to pass it down to the next generation. Everyone say it again, pass it down. As we close today, why don't we all stand? What can we be doing right now to focus on the next generation? Focus on passing it down. What's something that you can do? Is there a giant in your life that you're focusing a little too much on or forgetting about the promises of God? Is God asking you today to clear out some of those distractions so that you can put a little bit more focus on your family today? If there's anything that we can do to help make our family stronger It's to focus our eyes on Jesus. We need to fix our eyes on Jesus. Hebrews 12:2 says, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and the perfecter of our faith. So I want to do that this morning. Let's just fix our eyes and our focus on Jesus in this moment. You know, there's nothing better that we could do for your family than growing closer in your relationship with God. The Bible says that if you draw near to God, that He will actually draw near to you. And I know that many of you are going through a lot of hard times in your family. There's hardships, there's struggles in your marriage. Some of you are dealing with provision, and some of you are dealing with other things going on in your family this morning. And I really believe that if we can put our focus and our attention on Jesus, that we will just begin to see God open up the heavens and open up the doors over our families.